Night Vision. Following clues left by our ancestors, we unbury the past to reveal a knowledge of unfathomable value, putting us just a little closer to our own true birthrights. From the secret history of a possible bloodline of Jesus Christ, the secret history of America's founders, to the secret history of extraterrestrial interaction on our planet, here to bring light to the night. Your host for Night Vision Radio, Renee Barnett.
Hey everybody, welcome to Night Vision. Once again, I am your host, Renee Barnett. I'm really excited about tonight's show because I think it's going to be a really, really fun one. It's going to take me back down memory lane to my old stomping grounds where I grew up in southeastern Oklahoma and around that Oklahoma, Arkansas area that, just above the Louisiana and Texas borders, all those states converging in that small area. We had a lot going on down there. There's a rich history in that area. Of course, a rich native history, which goes back thousands of years with the Caddoan people and the Spiro Mounds that have been worked there for a lot of years now by archaeologists, but revealed a lot of information about people that lived there thousands of years ago. And we've got the Heavener runestone right down the road from that, which sort of gives us an indication that there might have been some Norse people or some Vikings exploring in that area. We've got a lot of stories about Bigfoot, UFOs, strange encounters and strange happenings. And there's nobody better to shed some light on all these things, including some of the most famous outlaws in our country's history, than our very own Race Hobbs from KGRA. He is our program director here, and I'm not just going to say nice things about him because he's my boss, because I really do like him. Hey, Race, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Renee. Thank you so much for having me on your program.
Well, of course, we've had a chance to talk a couple of times, and I told you every time I talk to you, my Southern accent gets thicker every single time. You take me right back home, right back to my own backyard, and I sound just like my mom and dad and everybody else down there, and it's kind of fun. It's very nostalgic for me.
That's a good thing.
It is. It really is. But, while we were off the air a few minutes ago, we got to talking a little bit about some of the outlaw history in that Oklahoma, Arkansas area. And I had it on my list to bring up, Bonnie and Clyde. But before I could even get on the air, you brought it up yourself. You got a very personal story with all that. So I'd love to have you share that with our audience. If you wouldn't mind, along with a lot of other stories. We got 2 hours to cover, so I think we can get into a lot of material, and this will give people a chance to get to know you a little bit better. And I'm going to try to pick your brain a little bit about you growing up in that area and sort of what the feeling of it is to you.
Well, you are impressive, Renee. I didn't know you before you came to Arkansas. I'm going to say this before we get started because we've got 2 hours to do this dance. But I just want to say this. We are super, super proud to have you on the KGRA roster and in the KGRA family. You are a gem. You are a true talent. And, your listeners know this. I'm not telling them anything, but I just want you to know from me to you, professionally, you are top shelf, and your credibility is top shelf, and you're just as beautiful as you are smart. So it just goes to show. Listen, you are just so cultured, and I truly appreciate having that culture right here at home at KGRA. That's a big part of why we started this station, was for people just like you.
Well, I am so flabbergasted and grateful. Thank you so much.
Well, it's the truth. It is absolutely the truth. And, you're so genuine. And like I said, I'm not telling your listeners anything. They know it. They know it all too well. But, I just wanted to say that because you are so smart. And every time, There are some radio shows out there in the digital and terrestrial world that when you listen to them, you're never going to get that time back. I mean, there's even something out there where I feel dumber for even listening to it than I was before I started. You certainly enlighten us all. You inspire us to go research and dig and do our own work. And that is the magic of a good radio host and a good researcher and an investigator. Someone who can do that. You breed sleuths out there. You help condition them. You help give them things that are going to take them away from this mess that you get in the mainstream news every day and that we're being bombarded with all the time, 24/7. So I enjoy coming to your shows on Friday nights. I will leave to go check on the brisket smoking out there in the smoker. Your producer, Bill, our amazing Bill Skywatcher, he does it too. But, when we come to your program, we always leave more enlightened. I do. I always do. So I am a big fan of your show. I am super thankful for being here. And yes, to answer your question, the state of Arkansas has, some pretty colorful characters in its history, to say the very least. And the one in particular you were referring to that we were talking about before the program was Bonnie and Clyde, the infamous outlaw Bonnie and the infamous outlaw Clyde, her boyfriend. And, they, I think Bonnie was from Oklahoma. You had mentioned that. I wasn't sure, but I'm pretty sure that's where she was from originally.
I don't know if she was born there, but she was from there when they met. She was from Oklahoma.
Right. And they did a lot of traveling between Missouri, Oklahoma, and Texas.
Yep.
And we're right here on the border in the River Valley between the Ozark Mountains to the north and the Ouachitas to the south of us. Right, literally, Fort Smith's history is known as, it was known as hell on the border. There was a big military fort here, named Fort Smith. And, between here and Kansas City were the two sort of major cities that you stopped at on your way west through Indian Territory, like when the gold rush hit and people, the pioneers and people were settling out west. This was the last civilization you were going to come to before you made your way into Indian Territory. And, it was a pretty rough place for a long time.
It was the Wild Wild West. Even though we're right dead center in the United States, it was the Wild Wild West back then.
It was absolutely wild. It was, we had a judge here, Judge Isaac C. Parker, who was named or known as the hanging judge.
Yeah. You did not want to end up in Judge Parker's court.
No, you did. You might not like the outcome because,
that's right.
He always said that he never hung anyone. The law did. And, with that story, came some of the most famous lawmen really of the region and of the time. The U.S. Marshals Museum, is right here in Fort Smith. They actually got the bid for, the U.S. Marshals Museum here. And it was it came down to like 3 different locales. I think Kansas City was one of them as well. But there were, I think the U.S. Marshals are like the longest federal agency, like policing agency in history. And, there was one of the heroes really of the town that I was born and raised from was a black man named Bass Reeves. And the people back then, he was a U.S. Marshal. He was a black U.S. Marshal back then. And,
when was that?
That was in the 50s, 1860s, all the way till, probably to 1900. I know Bass Reeves lived until 1910, so it's probably right, and I think he was born in the mid-30s, so it was right around that time that he was here. But here's the interesting thing about Bass Reeves. He is believed to have been the inspiration for the Lone Ranger. And there was a unique aspect to Bass Reeves' history, and that was that every bounty that he set out into Indian territory to go retrieve, because see, these guys would commit crimes over here in Arkansas and, in other states, and they would run out into Indian territory to hide from the law. And he was literally born right here in Crawford County where I live now, which is the town right next to Fort Smith. And he passed away in Muskogee, Oklahoma in 1910. So he knew this whole region around here like the back of his hand. He grew up here. He knew the people here. He was a black man, so the natives took to him really well, and he worked really well with the Native Americans over in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Most of them there, of course, because of forced relocation. The ones that were right here across the border,
the
Cherokee,
Tears, yeah.
The Caddo, so he I can't remember the number, Renee, how many he apprehended, but every one that he caught, he brought back alive. Every one of them. Every bounty he collected, he brought them back, all of them alive. He caught all of those guys alive and brought them back alive. And that was an amazing feat. They have an absolutely beautiful bronze statue of him on his horse, right down there at the end of Garrison Avenue in Fort Smith. A true pride to this city. Yes, absolutely. So when the U.S. Marshals
hear of Bass Reeves, I never ever heard of him. That's amazing.
Yeah. It is. It's he's a true hero. He really is, because when you think about how bad, people were back then, the people that were on the side of good had to be really bad to catch some of them.
Yeah. It'd
And
be tough.
if you caught them alive and apprehended them alive and you returned them back to the courthouse or the jailhouse alive, you had to not only be really tough, but you had to be very, very wily and very intelligent to do it.
Wow.
And so he is really one of the most standout American law enforcement officers, and Fort Smith is truly proud to have him right here at home at the U.S. Marshals Museum here. If anyone out there ever gets the notion to come, because we're right on Interstate 40. Interstate 40 runs from one end of the country to the other practically. So if you're ever coming through Arkansas or Oklahoma and you find yourself at the border here, by all means do yourself a favor and take that Fort Smith exit and go down Main Street down there. And there's a lot of history and a lot of really neat things to do, but that U.S. Marshals Museum is really something to see. I think for every young family, and to share that knowledge and that expose your kids to that knowledge and what it was like back then goes a long way in showing just how far we've come in this world. And, in settling this country, because really, Renee, socially and the social environment today and how, everyone seems to be divided. It's really important for people to understand how things were. Yes, they were bad and they've gotten a lot better. but it's just the real raw history because there's just not that much civics being taught in school. So when you're able to show your family the real location where a lot of this stuff took place and those heroes that were, standout citizens that risked their lives and put themselves between you and harm, it goes a long way to driving the point home that it took a lot of brave, good people to make this world we live in today possible.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful that you told me that story. It's one, that I never knew. It's amazing how much you can learn about even things in your own backyard that you didn't know about. I mean, there's so much out there, and that's why it's so wonderful to have you and other people. I learn stuff all the time, and it's great to hear something. I mean, I wish I had been to Fort Smith. I have not been there in a long time.
You need to come on back. And
I know. Well, I've been to Tulsa, where my mom, ended up living, and my sister lives. Mm-hmm. But I haven't been back down that way, but I need to go. I think, there's probably a reunion coming due or something, especially now that everybody's getting out and about again. But I see that there's a movie on Amazon called Bass Reeves. It's a video from 2010, and I don't know who's in it or anything, but I'm going to check that out and see if it has any good information. It's a drama, so I'm sure they've taken some artistic license with it, but maybe at least they've got the baseline story.
Well, you and I are in the same boat in regards to that because I've never seen it either.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I'm sure it's really a good one, though.
Now, but with the... with the outlaws and things that we were talking about over, before we actually started the program, we're talking about Bonnie and Clyde. They definitely came down through that area a lot, and they traveled back and forth a lot. And I think there was somebody in your family that had a very personal connection with Bonnie and Clyde, at least for a night or two. So can you talk about that?
I can. My great grandfather was he was a farmer up in the Shaberg in the Ozark Mountains in a town called Shaberg, just right by Mountainburg, a town not a major town, but a bigger town called Mountainburg is more recognizable to a lot of people from around here or people that have been through here. But he was a farmer, and during Prohibition, they all made moonshine. They all made their own alcohol up in those hills.
Back in the woods. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. And, so when Prohibition hit, he made a pretty lucrative business out of it and really made a small fortune, making moonshine up there. He had a really good, I guess a knack for making it, and had a really good recipe, and everybody just loved it because he wound up selling that operation and buying a bunch of property. See, he had 5 sons, and 4 of them all went into the military. As soon as they were of age, they all signed up, to go, into the military. And, the oldest one that was in the Army actually had information that the Army Corps of Engineers was going to build a pontoon bridge across the Arkansas River from a town called Van Buren, where I live now, to the town I was born in Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Which is just right next door.
Yes. They called them the Twin Cities back then.
Yeah. It's almost the same town.
My great-grandfather, Osty, he thought, now's the time to make this move. He always wanted to come down to the valley and farm down here. But he wound up taking that information that he knew that the government was going to do this project and build this bridge and connect these 2 towns, these 2 cities, which would mean that everybody north of that river would be coming down too from all the towns and the various settlements and stuff up in there to come down to get to Fort Smith. To cross that river was, it was kind of a pain back then, but he came down, he sold his operation. He came down, he bought like 500 acres right over here on the west side of the river. And he built on a it was a 1-lane dirt road. He built a fuel station there that had 2 of those, those see-through fuel pumps on it and out front. And, it was just like something out of one of those old black and white movies, like a house with a little awning out in front of it with those 2 pumps. And, he went on to build these courts around it. These were little small, what my parents always called kitchenettes. They looked like little outhouse buildings to me, but like you would store you put behind your house, like a little mother-in-law or something where you would store boxes and things like that. But they actually had refrigerators and sinks and bathroom and a bed in there and a little couch and a coffee table. And they were just little tiny homes. And people would rent them and stay in them by the week or by the night and that kind of thing. And it was called Hobbs Courts. And so people could come, they could fuel up their vehicle, they could stop and get something to eat because Matey she was an African American that worked for my great grandfather, and they had a little, kitchen in the back of the gas station, and they cooked food for people and travelers and then people could stay there as well. And one night, a young, good-looking couple came in, and they wanted a room for a couple of nights, and they paid up, and they were really nice, good-looking young couple. And apparently Clyde, saw my great-grandfather in the back, sitting in his chair, whittling on a stick or something and drinking some clear fluid out of a mason jar. and he approached him, and he was like, well, you got in that jar, Pop, or whatever, and he's like, well, take a shot of it. He gave him a shot of it, and he apparently was impressed with it. He pulled out some cash. He said, do you have any for sale? And my great grandfather, sold him a couple jars of it. And I guess he took it back to his room, and he and Bonnie, partook and whatever. And then later they came out laughing and giggling and, sat down with my great grandfather and just talked with him for half the night, around. And they just had a really good time. And, the next day, they went into town, and when they came back, they had some items. I forget what they were, but they had bought my grandfather something, and I can't remember right off the top of my mind what that was. I can't remember what it was in that story, but my great grandfather was, he was, taken by it. He was really, happy that they had thought of him, and then they, went to their kitchenette. They spent the night or whatever. And then later that evening, they had, a guy that had come by and had said something about, the police were looking for Bonnie and Clyde. They were supposed to be coming through and this and that and the other and whatever. And my great grandfather put 2 and 2 together, and he figured out that was them. Okay. Well, the next morning when they were packing up their car to leave, he actually told them, he didn't know they were packing up to leave at the time, but they were, because they told him. Because he went to him and he just told him, he said, I think I know who you are, and just want you to know I'm not going to say anything, but if you're going to stay here, I don't want any monkey business. You know what I mean? I don't want any shooting. This is my family here and this and that, and I don't want any clowning going on. But if I hear of anything like, going down or whatever, I'm going to be the first one to start shooting. And I've got a lot of guns. You know what I mean? So they were like, well, we're actually packing up. We're on our way, to Missouri or whatever. We're on our way home, and, we're not going to bother you at all, Mr. Hobbs, or whatever. They left without any problems whatsoever, and there was nothing ever happened. And there was some time later, Renee, that where they came back through. They actually came back through, and they got another room and stayed there again. And, they planned on, staying for a couple of nights, and they paid up for a couple of nights, but they wound up leaving early without saying anything to anyone. And he never saw him again. They never came back through there and stayed again before they got caught up and got shot and killed. But my great grandfather, he always said that was a tragedy because they were such a good looking young couple that had the whole world in front of them that, you would just never have known really that they were capable of doing what they had done.
Yeah.
Just by sitting and having a conversation with them. You would never know it.
It's funny because, during that time, you hear a lot of stories about a lot of these, outlaws, bank robbers, and people that would almost move about freely among, certain communities and without being turned in, is what people kind of had the idea almost of, if you're not bothering us, we're not going to bother you. And I know my dad's uncle was in the Pretty Boy Floyd gang. He was a outlaw called Dube Carlin, Dube Carlin, D-U-B, and he would come and visit. According to my grandparents' stories, he would come home and visit and hang around town, and nobody would ever turn him in. Cause he was home and that was his family. And I know a lot of times, like even when I was growing up there, it would be like if there was someone there that had a good family or was connected to a good family, that if some trouble came around, people just kind of ignored it because they didn't want to embarrass the good family. And I saw that even, in my, childhood and teenage years, growing up, how, people would kind of like sweep things under the rug or just not turn you in. And, that seems to be in a way, that was sort of the code of the time, it's like, you don't bother us and we won't bother you. You treat us with respect and we'll do the same for you. And I guess there was probably a little bit of, notoriety going on, especially with Bonnie and Clyde. And I think there were some people rooting them on, because it was a kind of a romantic, wild story. Of course, it got very, very violent and, they died in a hail of, I think it was 167 bullets, in Louisiana somewhere. But, it was a wild, wild time.
The G-men got him. Yeah,
yes.
It was a really violent way to go, for sure.
They just got totally ambushed.
Yeah. But, they had to do whatever they could do to get them stopped.
I guess so. Yeah.
I understand. But, Renee, you bring a very interesting point to the front of my mind. And back then, word of mouth was the educator. It was not books or, even newspapers as much as it was, as far as being out here in the country, in the Midwest and in the South, rural areas, just, it was word of mouth. So people heard a lot of things. And there were a lot of legends and pines and things that were embellished on. Some things were kind of made up and some things were just kind of, made to be a little more exciting and a little more interesting. And then some things were just absolutely the raw truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so when some of these more prominent families, you're right, when some of these more prominent families had, you know, a bad apple in the gang, in the group, you know, they were still their family. They were still, you know, and as long as that badness or that wrongness or that, you know, that illegal nature, whatever that was, didn't affect the people immediately around the area, then they didn't have a problem with it.
Right.
You know, it wasn't something that affected them, and they weren't willing to put themselves on blast to get involved with it. So,
yeah.
Until things just really got so bad that you got that kind of exposure and you were all over every newspaper and you had wanted posters at every little general store and mom and pop store on every dirt road around, you know, did someone, you know, take that next step and rat you out, if you will.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And Fort Smith, you know, it was certainly one of those places. It was certainly one of those places that had a lot of colorful characters, you know, that came through, and Bonnie and Clyde were they were no exception. You know, you had mentioned Bart Starr. She was an outlaw, you know.
Bellstar. Yeah. Bellstar. Now,
Bellstar, yeah.
Her daughter, Pearl, ended up in Fort Smith running what they called back in those days a house of ill repute. And, so she became quite a character in Fort Smith history.
It was probably Miss Laura's. And a matter of fact, I think that place is still standing to this day.
Now, if it is, there was a window, I'm pretty sure a stained glass window that had a star and a string of pearls, you know, for Pearl Star. I think, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a long time, but there's actually a book that I read, 100 years ago. My mom had it when I was a kid, called Bellstar and Her Pearl. And it was all about Bellstar. And the reason, Bellstar spent a lot of time in that whole area, and particularly around where I grew up in eastern Oklahoma. And she must have been, you know, coming down to Arkansas too, if that's where they ended up. But, of course, she got shot and killed. And I don't think we ever knew who. Some said it was her son that killed her, but others said, you know, she was just ambushed as she rode along. So I don't know. But just a quick story from I think it was in junior high school, middle school, as they call it today. And there was two boys that went to my school, and there was supposed to be this property where it was legend that Bellstar was an old hideout house, which it was of Bellstar, but there was people that believed that she buried treasure out there, that there was, you know, the treasure of Bellstar, which had never been found. And anyway, these two young guys went out there one night, and they went out there in their pickup truck, and they got out there, and then they said they saw Bellstar sitting in a rocking chair reading the Bible. You know, of course, Bellstar had been dead, 100 years. And they jumped in their truck and they took off, and they said she was sitting between them. And I know that these guys believed what they said, because anytime you would drive by their house at night, all the lights would always be on, because those boys got so scared out of their wits. That house was lit up like a Christmas tree every night. And so that was one of the little things. But did you hear any tales of Bellstar down there and around around Fort Smith and around that area? She was quite a character.
Yes, she was. And she frequented this whole area for a long time. But the stories that I remember them talking about was, her gang and how she was sort of co-opted between the Arkansas and Texas, and how successful they were, at their gangsterism.
Yeah, she ran with the younger boys, the Cole Younger,
yes.
and his gang.
But she was quite proficient with the iron for sure. She had a reputation of being a dead shot with it, and you just
she rode side saddle.
Oh yeah, she absolutely. There's photographs of her, in the History Museum down in Fort Smith, of her, on Main Street down there in Garrison, side saddle on horses.
I've seen very few photographs of her, so I bet they probably have some that I have not seen.
Oh yeah.
When I was a little kid,
she was quite attractive too, really, for especially for back then. She was not, kind of. The rugged rep that she had.
She was, she had quite a few relationships, so I guess she was found pretty attractive by the guys around at that time, at least. When I was a little girl, my parents drove over to this little town out near, probably about 10, 15 miles from where I grew up, a little town called Briartown. And that's where her grave is. And we went all back through and went to this guy's property, and he let us go see it. He had it fenced off because people kept taking stones and things, from it. But, so I was captivated by her from a very, very young age, probably because, you didn't hear very much about too many female outlaws. And then along came Bonnie. But,
and she met her end at those gallows down there. So, she was one of the ones that put the noose on, from Isaac Parker, and they're still there. You can go down there and see right where it happened.
Wow.
For, like 80 some people that hung there. But, literally people went there and had, Saturday picnics and watched people get hung.
I know. It's funny. I watch a lot of historical documentaries and stuff. I'm really a history nerd. And the way that people used to go, it was like a big day. They would crowd in the middle of the town and, jeer and cheer and everything else. It would bring their kids, and you'd think, oh my God, are those kids going to be scarred for life? But that's just the way it was then. And I think there was a hanging in England somewhere, and I remember oh my gosh, now I can't recall, but it was a famous historical character was in the town at the time of the hanging, and his room was overlooking it, and it horrified him. Suddenly it dawned on him how horrific it was that people are out there, taking enjoyment out of watching somebody get their neck snapped, and he began to start changing the rules and ending the public executions in England. But, pretty bad stuff.
Well, I mean, I think, I think life was a lot cheaper back then. I mean, we could probably say that today because there's still far too many murders and killings and things like that. But back then, I think that it was a good provincial sort of tactic to show children and to show people what happens to you when you take a bad path.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and the further back you go, really, this kind of cheaper life got, as you said, even if you were royalty, hey, you could be in power 1 minute and then the next minute somebody else takes over and they chop your head off.
Yeah, you get your head lobbed off. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's true.
I've been spending a lot of time, thinking I'm glad I wasn't royalty back in the old days because, I'm sure I would have gotten my head chopped off at some point. They didn't ever live very long. But,
politics was real politics back then.
Back in the day. Well, what about, there seems to be a lot of sort of high strangeness also that goes goes on in the areas. I know it's sort of the woods and the forests and, the hills and everything, the mountains seem to sort of conducive to mystery, but you hear a lot of tales about Bigfoot and about other, paranormal activity, UFO sightings and all that. And every time I think about that stuff, I always kind of hearken back to the crystal mines in Arkansas. And I'm not, a big crystal person. I think they're beautiful and I have some and I love them. And, I'd love for them to be able to do magic for me. Maybe they are and I don't know it, but it just seems like certainly we know that, they're conductors and, crystals are used in transmissions and radios and things like that. There's definitely some kind of an energy factor going on with that. And I often wondered whether or not that had any bearing on, some of the strange goings on around there.
It most certainly, probably, yes, I would say. Have you been in any of those crystal mines? Some of the most magnificent crystals in the world come out of Arkansas. I have a fabulous story that is firsthand. Pretty much 80% of it is firsthand.
Wow.
About a crystal mine down in South Arkansas. You were talking about it. Arkansas does have a lot of strange history. Back in 2011, we had like over 1,000 blackbirds that just fell dead from the sky. They still to this day don't know what caused it. Things happen around this state that are just so bizarre. From the Boggy Creek monster, the Falk monster. We can talk about that later too. But,
I know. I met them. I've been down to their house. They wouldn't show us the monster. Yep.
Yep. Well, this crystal mine is called Board Camp Crystal Mine, and it's just right southeast, I think, of Mena, Arkansas.
Right.
And it's on the southwest side of the state in the Ouachita National Forest, right on the edge. Matter of fact, there's like a horseshoe-shaped section right on the edge of the Ouachita National Forest that, it kind of cuts back into the national forest and comes back around in the horseshoe shape. And that is where the crystal mine is. It's not in national forest property, but it's just right there. And, I was investigating, cases for the Mutual UFO Network at the time. And we received a case, and actually the case came to me from a friend of mine that, I had met down there when I was investigating a case years before independently. And when you're investigating, sort of strange mysteries and UFOs and that kind of thing, business cards are really worth their weight in gold because you hand those out to all these people. And then when something weird comes across their path, they're going to pick up that card and call you. Mm. And that's how we're going to get, that strange object that crashed in the farmer's field back there. And he doesn't know what it is. And someone says, hey, I know a guy who looks into that stuff. Here's his card. Give him a call, and then civilians appear on the scene and, at least they could probably be the first responders to something that may literally change the world. And, I have investigated lots of cases down in South Arkansas and on the east side of the state and the western side of the state, North Texas, and then definitely Louisiana, and Mississippi. But this case was really intriguing because it came to me from some new property owners who were developing, their property for a KOA campground originally. They were people from California that had settled down there. They came through Arkansas years prior, loved the area, loved the state. They wanted to retire here, and they did. And they came here and they bought land, and they were going to make an RV park, like a KOA campground there. And when they were dozering the roads for the campgrounds, they came across, the dozer blade just started, white smoke started coming out from under the dozer, and they had actually plowed into a vein of crystal. And as that steel blade raked across that crystal vein, it made that white powdery smoke. And so he stopped the dozer. He got off. He looked. He saw what he saw, and he backed the dozer away. They changed their business model, and they thought, we've got to look at, the geology of our land. And so they had vested some money into some geologists to come down, take a look. And they did some spot drilling, and they had some good quartz veins that were running through there. And these quartz crystals, Renee, in the Ouachitas are highly sought after because quartz always grows north. Seven-sided quartz grows north. And this mountain range, they're really unique in how they run east and west. And it really makes these really unique crystals. The government even mined them for years down there out of World War II for their radars and so forth. Crystals for their radars and equipment. So,
and specifically the ones in the Ouachitas?
In the Ouachitas, that's correct. Yes, ma'am. Although, the quartz and gemstones, all of that stuff is so rich in the south and in the north of Arkansas. In the Ozarks, up, near Eureka Springs, where we go for the Ozark UFO conference every year, or used to.
Love Eureka Springs.
Oh, it's such a beautiful place. And their hills up there are just full of quartz and rose crystal and sugar quartz and all that. So, they had a son from California coming down to visit them. And they just finished dinner. They were on the patio in the back, and they were listening to, the insects, and they were, having some tea and just talking and watching the sunset. And I think the mom had gone in to do the dishes and, and to clean up and, get things taken care of inside. And the dad and the son were outside, I think smoking a cigar and just, shooting the breeze. And, they started to see these little orbs of light moving through the trees. And, just small, like maybe golf ball size, little, like gray or white, dim type lights that were moving through the woods back there on the ridge back behind the place. And, he had called his wife out there to see if she could see it. She came out. She was, pouring some tea, and they were like, can you see it? Can you see it? And so they're all looking back there. And about the time they were all looking, these three beams of light kind of shoot up out of the ground, up into the air. And they were three individual columns of light. And they were all three very adamant that the light didn't fade away at altitude, that they went up so high and then they just stopped like they were hitting something. I mean, like they were right. They just ended. And, it happened 7-8 seconds, something like I don't recall right offhand. It was really quickly. And then they blinked off, just snap of a finger. They just blinked off. And so, it kind of started them to a degree that, they wanted to go back there and see what it could have been, but they didn't want to go out there in the dark. So yeah, they go back inside the house and they wonder what it was. And then everything seemed to be all right. Everybody went to bed that night. The next morning, the dad got up, and the landowner, he went back there to discover there was a spot back there where they had just started a fresh dig site for quartz, and where that dig site was evidence of something that happened there that, twisted everything metal and moved everything that was metal. And it was, very clear. It was really clear that, something had happened right here, right there. And so he goes back to the house he said he felt, he just had a weird feeling back in this place. And when he saw that the T-posts on the barbed wire fence, holding up the barbed wire fence, had been twisted and bent over, a metal gate that went across the road had been twisted and laid over. All of the metal tools and picks and chisels and stuff that they had used had all been moved exactly the same distance in the same direction from where they were laying on these mats where they were digging. There was just really weird, ominous sort of feeling he got. He went back to the house and he came back with a camera and with his compass, and he took his compass out of his pocket. And he opened up the cap on it, and the thing was just spinning like crazy, just twirling around and spinning around. And so he actually, told a neighbor down the road from his place, and that neighbor was someone who knew who I was and what I did, and they actually reached out and called me, and I did a phone interview with him. And subsequently, I was in the most elite investigation team in MUFON at the time. It was called the SAT team. And it was a team that was developed by Chase Kletsky and the international director at the time, to investigate high profile and cases, military cases, and cases with, political figures and high profile figures that wanted to really remain quiet and out of the light of day. And, I called her up. I called Chase, my boss at the time, and I said, Chase, listen, we've got a potentially really, important case here that I think that we need to investigate. So we grabbed our go bags. She was down in Georgia, right on the eastern seaboard in Georgia, right by Savannah, Georgia. And, she got in her Jeep and she drove up right then. She grabbed her go bag, came up. We met up down there and we did a 2-3 day investigation down there. It was a magnetic trace case, for sure. We knew that, because the compass was moving, because we found that all of the metal tools, Renee, that they had been using, the picks and the hammers and the chisels and all that stuff they were using to pry into this vein of quartz down there. If you picked up a pick and you took your compass and you moved your compass towards that pick, the compass would either turn away from it or turn towards it. The needle would wiggle and point right at it, or you could flip over the other end of that pick and it would spin the compass away from it. It would turn the point, the needle away. So they were
like magnetized?
They were all magnetized. The fence posts were magnetized. This was all in just over a 50-foot radius from that center. And that was such a bizarre case for us. And it was something that was very, very anomalous. Even a bucket that was half filled with water was turned over uphill. It was turned over on its side uphill, because it was actually sitting kind of, on a little carved out spot in the dirt where it was just level enough to keep it from tumbling over, because they cleaned their crystals in this water, in this bucket.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a slope there. Well, when this happened, that bucket turned uphill, like on its side, still had water in it. And we were able to take samples of that water, which had traces of metal in it, which, sort of lent itself to the same thing, that whatever was metal was affected by whatever happened in that spot. And, so we found ourselves coming back to this case, several times over the course of the next couple of years. And I know we're up against a break. But when we come back from the break, I would love to tell you and your listeners exactly what, happened one night when we came back to do a night sky watch there with thermal video cameras and infrared video cameras and night vision. And we had about 8 investigators there that night, and something really crazy happened.
Oh my God. Oh, it's going to be a cliffhanger. It's going to be a cliffhanger. Now, just remind me again, I know we're up against the break, and, but now where was this in Arkansas? I mean, just what was the nearest town, let's say? The
nearest main town is Mena.
Oh, it's near me. Oh gosh, Mena's got all kinds of weird stuff going on.
Board camp. Yeah, of course. And board camp is right next to Mena. It's like the next town from it.
Oh.
You know, when there's the airport, the famous Mena Airport.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Right down the road from that airport is where Board Camp, the little township of Board Camp, is.
And that's where the crystal mine is.
Board Camp Crystal Mine. It sure is.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, I can't wait to hear more about it and so many other things. But let's see. What do we got? What's Bill saying? Oh, I think we got a couple more minutes to go, as a matter of fact. But, Race, while we've got a couple minutes, tell me about, or tell the listeners, I'm sure they already know, but if there's anyone new that's tuning in, tell us how we can hear more from you on KGRA.
Well, they can hear more from me on a show that's going to begin next week, next Monday, as a matter of fact.
The producers.
Bill, that's right. That's right. Bill Skywatcher, Eric Brager, the head of operations, and myself are going to do a show. It's only a half hour to 45 minutes-ish, somewhere in there. But it's called The Producers. And it's something that we thought about last year, and we kind of brainstormed around with it. And we just thought, you know, we get so many inquiries about things that go on, you know, off the air and in between commercials and before the show and after the show, and, you know, kind of what it's like and, you know, and that sort of thing. So we've put together some things that we've, you know, been able to record and to tape and behind the scenes and off the air and that kind of thing. And we've put them in the members area in the past. And I think that's going to be something that we're going to do with the new members area that we have now.
Oh, good. And we're going to talk more about the members area also when we come back, because I'm sure there's some news that I don't even know yet. And I know we've got a lot of new shows coming up. So if we got time, and if you don't mind, any little preview you can give us on what might be coming up on KGRA would be fabulous.
Of course, all right. I would love to. Yes, absolutely. Great.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more with Night Vision and Race Hobbs.
Every 2 seconds, someone needs blood. Whether it's a natural disaster or one single child suffering from illness, the American Red Cross stands ready to supply blood when it's most needed. But blood is a perishable product. Therefore, it must continuously be replenished. You can safely donate blood every 56 days. The need is constant and patients are waiting. Call your American Red Cross at 1-800-GIVE-LIFE to schedule your life-saving appointment. Please give blood today. Patients are depending on you.
Folks, this is very important information. What's to be said about CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. Our CBD is made from hemp and has 0.003 THC, which means this wonderful product won't get you high, no matter what amount you take. What does CBD do for the body? My hands are tied. But you can Google CBD benefits and be astounded. When you're finished reading, you'll want to log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. and purchase. Life is good when you feel good. People are tired of pain. People are asking for non-GMO organic products to help them with you fill in the blank. Legal in 49 states, and again, our CBD is made from hemp. Ancient Life Oil is about helping people one by one by one. If you wonder how good the product is, the CEO takes it every day without miss. AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Have a great day. Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. Getthetea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's getthetea.com. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
Hey members, the new KGRA-DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA-DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA-DB.
Your official contact for the best alternative talk on the planet. KGRA-DB.com.
Welcome back to Night Vision. If you're just joining us, my name is Renee Barnett and I'm the host. And my guest tonight is the Race Hobbs, KGRA's very own. Oh my gosh, he is sharing so many interesting stories, and it's almost embarrassing that I'm learning new things about the very, very place where I grew up. But, you know, I had to get away from there to sort of learn about some of the wild things in my own backyard that, you know, we just didn't pay attention to as kids. They were just things that you heard and things that were there. And because they'd always been there, we didn't realize the significance. You know, we were discussing off air the Heavener Runestone in that area. Amazing, amazing. But continue your story because we left our audience with a cliffhanger. They're going to kill me if I don't shut up.
It was kind of my first brush with a Bigfoot situation. You know, I've had friends that, told me Bigfoot stories. I had a friend who delivered newspapers, and he was on his way up to Northwest Arkansas to drop off a big load of those newspapers, Southwest Times Record newspapers. And it was about 4:00 in the morning. He was going up Highway 71, which has a lot of switchbacks in it up in the Boston Mountains up there. And he was literally going around one of those switchbacks where you're literally doing a U-turn.
Oh, so a switchback that's like a hairpin turn?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, those highways around there are so wild like that.
Yes. 71
especially at night.
Especially gnarly like that. And as his headlights swept, you know, through the tree line, you know, in the front of him, he saw a big brown, black, bipedal figure crawling up a rock face there. Because like on these switchbacks, you know, they're carved into the mountainside there. And, they literally clearly saw him and his wife saw this creature crawling up the hillside there, the rock face kind of in the trees. It was just in a patch that was just as clear as could be. And then, you know, I had some friends that lived up, not far from where my great grandfather was from up in Mountainburg area, in a place called Chester. And, they had tracks right there in the, stock pond that they had built for their cattle to drink from. And, there were Bigfoot tracks in it. And one night they were having drinks. They were in a deer camp not far from there. And they were in a trailer, like they had a deer camp, you know, with a big fire and everything. And he had his trailer parked right on the edge of the woods. And his arm, he was smoking a cigarette, but the other people in the trailer didn't smoke in the little pull trailer. And it was a small, you know, kind of confined little area. So he had his arm hanging out the window And he said that something literally grabbed his arm. And when he pulled his arm to jerk his arm away, it was a black hand holding his forearm. And he screamed. And when he did, it let it go. It let him go. These stories I have heard, but I've never had my own encounter at all. And here we were down there in Mena, where I just told you all we were investigating this board camp crystal mine, where there was a former employee. I'm just going to say he was a former Homeland Security employee. And, he was a law enforcement officer, right? And so he was carrying a weapon on his hip and the whole bit, and he was there, and he's a Bigfoot enthusiast and, had an interest in it, and a serious one, as a matter of fact. And, very quiet, kind of a laid back guy. He's not really all out front with this kind of thing, but
yeah.
He was telling me some stories. We had set up a sort of a base of operations in this little valley where a hill was behind us. The hill where the lights came from were in front of us. And, it was just kind of flat out there where we were for, maybe a football field in distance. And, to the right and the left of us, and a couple of the landowner himself and another investigator had gone off to the right of us. And I was sitting here talking to this guy, and I had a thermal image camera in my hand, and it has the camera in the hand, and it has a handhold on it, and it has the screen in the back of it. Yeah. So I'm literally looking at the thermal camera as these guys are making their way down the tree line over to the right of us. And they kept going and kept going and kept going until they got so far away from me that their thermal image on the screen itself looked just sort of like a little small cotton, like a Q-tip, shape. It was kind of a teardrop shape, of white on the thermal imager. And, so you couldn't see arms or legs or any sort of, you couldn't discern really what they were if you had to known what they were.
Right.
And so they had gone that far in distance from us. And, I think that thermal imagery, that camera had a range of about, I want to say it was like 700 yards, but it wasn't, I think it could detect heat at that distance, but not define it at that distance, I'll say. So anyway, we're talking and we're, blah, and I'm just sitting there in my chair looking at this thermal, and I'm kind of panning around and then I can hear those guys making their way back towards us, because you can start to kind of hear the leaves rustling and the steps in the gravel little over there. And so I shine I point the camera back over that direction, and there's the little dot again, the little Q-tip looking shape. And they're coming, and I'm kind of watching them, and then they stop. I can see, because everything else is kind of a blue, like a two-tone blue color. You can see trees, you can see the limbs and the foliage and that kind of thing, and you can see the lay of the ground and that kind of thing. And they kind of stopped, and then they started going again, Renee. And then all of a sudden they stopped again. And by this time I can see, I can start to see a little hump where their heads are, mm-hmm. in the little white circle, a little thermal white, censoring of them. And they froze, and you hear this ungodly crash coming through the woods. And they freak out, they call out, and they tear out running, across the land straight at us. Instead of walking or running from right to left up that way where they went before, they had just cut a 45-degree angle straight at us. They weren't going down to the right and then back this way. They just came right at us. And I was like, what in the world was that? And by the time that I got that out of my mouth, I could see that the thermal imager itself was able to, start to to form their bodies, their arms, and their legs. And then they were both individuals, with arms and legs. And it was just that fat. These guys were moving. And so they got back to the camp where we were, and we were like, what was that? What was that? What was that? And we were like, I don't know. They were like, they had no idea. They were just like, something big was crashing through those woods over there down below where we were. And then something, and they didn't know what it was at the time, came flying in front of them. Whether it was a big log or something. Well, we got flashlights, big flashlights. We had some big floodlights, some big flashlights. And we all went back out there, and right in the middle of that trail where they were was a pallet, a wooden pallet. Because when the landowner was going to make that, when he was going to make that KOA campground there,
yeah,
he was going to make a go-kart track for the kids to have something to do while they were there, while them and their parents were there. They were going to have a little swimming pool, a little go-kart track, and some fun stuff for the kids to do. And so he had like several pallets of tires brought in.
Right.
And they had actually moved the tires to another place on the land, but those pallets were stacked up over there in that area of the land in the woods, back in the woods. And something had taken one of those oak pallets and frisbeed this thing through the trees.
Oh, God.
and it didn't hit any trees because it couldn't have. When we went back in the daytime, my skin right now, I wish I was on camera. I would show you the chicken skin on my arms right now.
Oh my gosh.
There's just where these pallets were piled, where they were stacked back there in the trees. For even if a big, burly, giant man grabbed one of them and just spun around with it and then hummed it through the trees, I don't think that you could do it without hitting a tree.
Yeah.
That far. There was no straight line from those pallets where they were stacked in the trees to that road they were walking on the edge of that tree line.
Yeah, some of those woods are thick,
Oh, yeah. The underbrush was it was amazing. But, I don't know what it was. I don't know. I didn't see it on the thermal imager. And whatever it was, tossed this thing uphill even. It was and it went out into the land right out in front of them. It didn't just land right in front of them on the road, right at the edge. It went past them and out into the opening, into the clearing out there. So something had to be pretty strong, pretty powerful, and pretty accurate to be able to. I think that it had to come at them vertically. If you were able to get it behind your body and throw it over the top of your head vertically, then you could throw it through those trees without hitting something from where they were. But, it scared the shit right out of me. I mean, I'm telling you, my skin right now is I've got chicken skin right now from it.
Oh my God.
And then, I have yet to go back down there since, but I do know that they have successfully recovered Bigfoot tracks on that land down there where we were. They've got moldings of those tracks down there, and they've had other stuff that they've caught on camera, and they, cause they put up game cams and closed caption, not closed caption, but, CCTV up around their property and stuff. And they've been, sort of immersed in all of this ever since. And they're pretty grounded folks. I mean, they're really not your typical, they're not your typical sort of Bigfooters or UFO type people. They're just, I mean, honestly, Renee, from the first time that I met him when I went there to do this investigation on the magnetic trace case and the lights, the three beams of light or the columns of light, his biggest concern was safety. His concern was this metal was twisted and moved and manipulated in a way right in the air. Matter of fact, he closed down that mine. There was nobody, their primary source of income and everything was completely shut off. They stopped it because he had to come to some sort of a conclusion, before he would put anyone at risk being out on that land again if something happened.
Yeah.
You know, and he was,
he wasn't looking for paranormal stuff or Bigfoot. He was looking for safety and security for his property and his family.
He was a former FEMA employee.
Oh, wow.
And one of the things that, you know, part of his job responsibility was writing up these reports and safety reports and that kind of thing. So detail and all of that kind of stuff was paramount to him. And I found that to be it lent itself a great volume of credibility for me. When I recognized later after the initial interviews and the being there and meeting them and seeing the lay of the land and you know, having the freedom to walk out there alone, you know, a lot of people, and I've been with hucksters and hoaxsters and that kind of thing before, and they don't want to just let you go. They want to stay right with you, and they want to see what you see and what you think, and they want to try to manipulate you the whole way. This man let me go wherever I wanted to go, whenever I wanted to go, day, night, morning, noon, night. The only thing that he did do and his wife did do was they never let me go on an empty stomach. They literally put us up. They have a cabin there. They have a house, another house there that's on their land. Really nice house. So they gave us a place to stay. We didn't have to stay in a hotel anymore in town. And they fed us like we were family. But he was just adamant. Orville was just adamant. Orville's his name. People can Google it. And they put together a book and, oh crap, my phone. I said Google and my phone. Y'all probably. But you know, they've put together a little booklet and, they've put together, I think a picture album and stuff of the evidence that they have collected and stuff. Because when people come and they bring their families and they dig for crystals now out there and everything, and honestly, I told him, I said, you know, I'm no PhD and I'm not a geologist, but I don't think that there's anything dangerous here, that would be harmful to people. But you know, I left it up to him to make that decision. And I think he consulted some geologists, some Arkansas geologists and that kind of thing. And, you know, before he ever did open the mine back up, but they bring families out there. And it's always really neat when they, you know, see these castings of Bigfoot prints and that kind of thing. And there was even some talk of, someone saw a rock levitating off the ground out there.
Oh, wow.
Now, I didn't see that, and I don't, you know, I haven't been a part of privy to that kind of investigation or anything there. But I want to tell you that, you know, just much like Skinwalker Ranch has weird things that happen there, there are places all over the world that have sites that odd things happen there. And,
this sounds like
they can start up at any time, or they could have been that way all along, you know. But this is definitely one of those places that is just, you know, you could go there and you can look for amazing crystals that you can dig up and take home yourself and put on your mantle or on your desk or whatever. And while you're there, you may see a Bigfoot, you may see lights, you may see orbs. There's just no telling what could happen there.
That's right. That's right. And you were talking about that pallet being thrown. I mean, that's not the first story I've heard about Bigfoot throwing things at people, throwing rocks at people in the woods. Yeah. And then there was a family over there near Tallahena, Oklahoma, which isn't far away.
Yeah, you could throw a rock and hit Tallahena from where I'm talking about.
That they had said that they would come and throw rocks at their house. And, a lot of times the wife would be there alone, and these guys would come and throw rocks at the house. And they even claimed that they shot one time, but that some other ones took it into the woods. So I don't know, but I did a documentary on Bigfoot down in that area called Bigfootville. It was on television, and wow, it's all through that area. And you were talking about how this was a solid guy, Mr. Boardcamp, and the people that I talked to down in that area, which I was really amazed, because growing up, we didn't hear much about Bigfoot. We had other legends around the area and creatures and things like a giant black panther in our area. But I didn't really hear much about Bigfoot until I left there, and someone contacted me about a documentary they were doing about Bigfoot in Oklahoma. And I went like, oh my gosh. So we ended up going down there and doing that. And the people that we talked to, none of them were looking for any kind of attention. In fact, they had to be, some of them really had to be coaxed, and we had to, make sure we assured them that we were not going to, make them look stupid or silly, because they had taken a lot of razzing. I remember there was a track coach down in Broken Bow, Oklahoma, and he had a face-to-face encounter with a Bigfoot, and he would not go back out to that area until we finally talked him into it. I think his experience had been maybe like 7 years before we got there, and that was the first time, that he would go back. But we had bankers, we had nurses, we had all kinds of people that were just everyday stand-up people. And that had, truck drivers. They ran the gamut of these experiences with, a lot of them, fairly close up. Cops, a couple of cops we had. It was just, I have no doubt in my mind that they had some sort of experience. There's no doubt in my mind that they were being truthful. They were. So it's like, I would love to, get my own personal confirmation of it. But also, I think, like you've been investigating these types of things and other things for a long time. So, like, I'm pretty sure you got a little bit of a sense of when somebody's pulling your leg, or at least, after a while, people usually reveal themselves, So, there's some good people out there that have had some strange experiences.
Oh yeah, that's a fact. But I'll tell you, there was a time where I would say I've seen it all. And that was probably about 10 years into my 30-some year investigation into, mysteries and that kind of thing. But, I will never do it again. I'm telling you, because it's, there are people that are absolutely convincing and have all the credentials in the world that are nuttier than squirrel shit. I'm not kidding. But, you're talking about the Winding Stair Mountains. That whole area is rich in lore, all the way back to the Cheyenne and, the Caddo, the Cherokee, and, right there in Pensacola, all the way down through Podo and Heavener and all down through there, most definitely have there's a lot of stories and a lot of exposure to weird and odd things that have taken place down there. And there's no doubt at all, there is no doubt that Vikings were there. There's no doubt about it. The Heavener ruin stone, there's ruin stones all over that region down there where, these writings that are carved into these megalithic size stones, these are huge stones.
Yeah.
Many, many, many tons in weight to just, there's no moving them. When you see where they are and how big they are, you know why they selected those stones to carve on, to write on, and to mark. And Native Americans were spooked by it. They kind of stayed away from it. But even right here in Van Buren, Arkansas, where I live, there is a stone grave. There's like 4 stones that are propped up sideways, in this cemetery. It's in a cemetery called Fairview Cemetery. And some people believe that it was a Viking grave.
Ooh.
Because, the Vikings came up the Mississippi River, and then they came through the Arkansas River, and then up the Podo River from there. And also from the Arkansas River was Lee Creek, which is sort of another river about the size of the Podo River. And from where this grave is to that creek is, a quarter of a mile away, maybe something like that. It's not far. It's not far at all. But then there's, they were here, and there's reasons that they marked these places, and it's kind of random like, but what were they saying and what were they telling those that followed them is kind of something that has really baffled me over time, because there's a lot of theories about that, but I don't think there's anything really definitive, in regards to, who they were and when they got there and when they left or where they went. Bigfoot sightings, when you do like a Bigfoot track on a map, this whole area is just, there's no doubt, Renee, that these forests around here have animals in them and within them that have never seen a human being ever in their entire life. There's just places that the forest is so deep and it's so vast that nobody really goes out there ever.
Yeah.
And, that right there alone can make for, just some spooky campfire stories. To be sure.
I mean, people talk about, I live in Los Angeles. People say, oh, aren't you scared, to live in the big city and there's so much crime and everything. And I would much rather fend for myself in the city than to be way out in the woods somewhere. I mean, there's nothing scarier than, being isolated like that. I remember one night when we were doing the Bigfoot documentary, in fact, we just wrapped up and I had dropped my partner off over in Ada where he had left his car parked. And so I was going to drive. I was trying to figure out, do I drive over to my parents over in Stigler? Do I, it's kind of late. I hate to wake them up, so I think I'll just, get a motel or hotel. And I think I ended up in McAllister. But going from Ada to McAllister was the darkest, loneliest road, and I was on it alone. And then this one car came out from a side road and got right behind me and just followed me. And oh my gosh, talking about being scared witless. It was the spookiest thing. And I thought, man, I'd rather be right in the heart of, the city, the worst part of the city, than out here by myself right now. It can be very, very scary. There's something about the woods and being isolated.
Yeah, that's a fact. You know, I was raised in the Boy Scouts when I was young, and one of the big things that we got to do was go to the Jamboree every year. But it was the more intimate scout trips where we went on camping trips with just our troop, and they were smaller, and they were more, you know, they were sort of more intimate with you going hunting with your scoutmasters and your best friends that were, you know, in the troop with you. You went fishing, canoeing, hiking, and, you know, and did all this all together at different locations, you know, and deep in the woods. You know, it wasn't like you went to just a park. Me and two buddies of mine wanted to branch out. We wanted to go to this bluff shelter. We snuck out of our tents in the night, and we were going to go try to get to this bluff shelter and just hang out there, because there was this real beautiful waterfall that spilled over this bluff shelter into a round pool, and we wanted to go swimming, right? Yeah. And, we took off and we got to the bluff shelter. We got to go swimming. And, we got out, we dried off, we hung out, you know, and just, you know, kind of, it's pitch dark, you know. We found the bluff shelter because we could hear the waterfall, right? Yeah. But we somehow got turned around and we got lost trying to go back. Oh, gosh. You know, there's no lights nowhere. You know, you're in the pitch of black. And, the later it got, the more the cicadas really ramped it up. You know, the darker it gets, that's when those crickets and those insects really get loud. And, out there, it's just like insane loud. And, we got lost, and we found ourselves really, really, really scared, but we didn't scream. We didn't holler. We didn't call out. We just went back to that bluff shelter, and we stayed there in the dark. And you really get a sense of just how big the world is when it's just you. Yeah. And there's no civilization around. There's no mom or no dad. There's no food. There's no light. You don't have a weapon. You don't have a gun. You don't have a knife. Anybody could fall upon you out there, and, something bad could happen, and no one would ever know what happened to you. No one would ever, a mountain lion could have rolled up on us, or a bear or something. A tragedy could have happened, and, but you really, when you're isolated, you talk about isolation and that was one of the times in my life where I really felt that. I really felt very small, very weak and insignificant, because we are human beings, Renee, are running away from the natural order of things and the natural world from upon which we were created. At a blinding pace. Everything within our lives, more and more and more and more and more in each given day, with each hour that goes by, something else is being created or invented or wrapped around us that is totally unnatural. And when you are put back into something that you should feel totally comfortable in, which would be the natural world from upon which you came. Right. To be so out of place and sort of out of your skin and,
out of your element, it feels.
Out of your element, that you're just filled with terror just from your own thoughts. It is very sobering, to say the least. Yeah.
I mean, there's so much forest land in those mountain areas there. I forgot how many thousands and thousands and thousands of acres that there are. I know there have been some deforestation of some of that area down there. In fact, some of the area where we were shooting, I don't know if that's still going on, but I mean to tell you, you could definitely get lost and no one would
Yeah.
ever find you.
Yeah. We used to see trucks with trees in them, logs in them a lot, but we don't anymore here. Not really much at all. But you know, we were talking about Boggy Creek and the Fouke Monster and that kind of thing. That's
Smoky
also
Crabtree.
That's also down there in South Arkansas.
Yeah.
And it's a true story. The legend of Boggy Creek is an absolutely true story. Well documented. They've made several movies about it and that kind of thing. And that all comes from right down there south of where, you know, we had that incident happen on us that night down at the Board Camp Crystal Mine.
Yeah.
And you know, Arkansas is truly, you know, wealthy in these kinds of stories and legends and you know, really an amazing place to visit. It really is. I don't want to talk about this entire show, you know, about the scary and the awful parts of, you know, the gangsters and that kind of thing. Because look, you know, Hot Springs was kind of a place that was created, you know, by gangsters, you know.
Yeah. President
Franklin Delano Roosevelt visited Hot Springs, Arkansas, but, you know, so did Al Capone. You know what I mean? Lucky Luciano, Charlie Luciano, the real godfather of the crime families, that organized La Cosa Nostra and all of that back then. They came down here. They started the racetrack at Oaklawn Park. I mean, they brought all the wealthy Italian amenities and everything that they wanted right down here. And when the heat got too bad up there, they came down here to sleepy little Hot Springs in the Ouachita National Forest down there, a little out of the way place where they could pay off the law enforcement officer or the town sheriff or whatever. And they could come down and soak in Hot Springs baths and get massages and bet on the racetrack, you know?
Right.
And, but it's also I was talking about how, Elvis Presley got his hair cut right here at Fort Chaffee, right here in the town where I'm from. Matter of fact, the chair, the very barber chair, the mirror, everything that took place the day Elvis got his haircut there is still there in a little museum still to this day.
Oh my gosh.
And something really interesting was, I had just mentioned it to Bill and you earlier. We were before the show and Bill was like, I didn't know anything about that. That's amazing. You got to say that. But like, my grandfather, on my mother's side, he was my step grandfather. He was an Italian from Chicago. And he was one of like 7 brothers, and he was the only one that didn't go into the mob. He went into the army and made a career in the army. Well, no, that's not true. He had another brother that was a federal judge, and then the rest of them were all in the mob. One was a federal judge, and one was a cook in the army. But he was the head cook on the Fort Chaffee Army base, which was a World War II training base. Down here, you know, in the Mississippi Delta in the South, you know, the humidity is sweltering down here in the summer. It's just amazing. So, you know, they went to places to train these men in jungle conditions for the Pacific War. And those conditions were a lot the same, I think, here in the summer, in the heat of the summer. So this big base, Fort Chaffee, is where they brought Elvis Presley from Memphis to get his hair cut when he was inducted into the Army and sworn in to the Army here. It was at this base. And my grandfather was the head chef there. The head cook. He actually got my mother, his stepdaughter, and her husband, my dad, on the base to get to see Elvis. And, so when he got his hair cut, the barber swept the hair up and he put it in a coffee can, and 2 MP soldiers took it out back and burned it because so many people were trying to buy, you know, beg, borrow, steal, whatever they had to do, bribe to get some of it. And they were given orders to take it and burn it. And, So he was actually holding the can of his hair, and he handed it to the MPs. He handed it back to them, and he stepped out off the back porch where they were going to go burn it, because there was press and all kinds of, it was kind of chaotic. And so he goes out the back with the MPs, and there was my dad and my mom, sitting upside their Impala, their Chevy, with my oldest sister. She was a baby at the time, newborn. And he came over, and, my dad was smoking a Camel cigarette, and he asked my dad if he had a light. And my dad was like, of course. And he pulls out a Zippo and literally lights his cigar.
Elvis's cigar.
Is this your car? And yeah. And he goes, you mind if I jump in here real quick? And, I just want to take a couple drags off this cigar. He goes, this is crazy. And, he was trying to get acclimated to not having that hair. He was feeling very naked without his hair. And, he just wanted a quiet place out of the way that he could hide, away from the press and everything for a minute and enjoy a cigar right there in my mom and dad's car. And I actually was in a wreck with my mom in that car.
Oh my gosh.
Back when we used to stand in the car, in the front seat and looking out the window and over the back seat and all of that.
Yep. Did you ever lay up, in the back seat, in the back windshield, lay up there and go to sleep?
Of course, it was warm.
It was insane. Yeah. And you could look out at the sky,
Oh, yeah.
It was really cool. But you know what? I got so into everything that you've been saying that I missed a question that came to us, a good half hour or so ago from Knight Rider. And he's saying, is this anywhere near that Skinwalker area? No, it isn't. If you want to expand on that to Knight Rider.
The Skinwalker Ranch?
Yeah.
I wonder if that's what, Skinwalker Ranch is in northern Utah. It's actually in the northeastern part. Utah is kind of a little bit of a square, kind of a slight rectangle shaped state. And the top right of it has a little notch cut out, and Skinwalker is right underneath that notch on the right side of the state. We're about 1,250 miles away from there. Yeah. To the east in Arkansas. This was in South Arkansas. It's in a town called Board Camp, Arkansas. Board Camp, like the board, like a wooden board. And you can Google it and go there right now and take a look at it. Board Camp Crystal Mine is the name of the place. I'm pretty sure it's still open.
And just so I'm straight on this, the experience that you had with the guys and the pallet being thrown was on this same property or in the same area?
Yes, absolutely. And something else that I left out as well, because you were talking about rocks being thrown, right?
Yeah.
That same night, there were about 4 or 5, I can't remember, it's 4 or 5 little small stones that were thrown from, I don't know what direction they were thrown from, but I heard it, hit the ground, and the ground had been mowed right in front of where we were. The ground had been, freshly cut. And, it's there. He was building a stage there. He had a stage there. There's a stage now where, like musical artists and people can come, or comedians or whatever could come. This was a part of what he was doing for that KOA campground initially. And he's had like musicians, and like the Marshall Tucker Band has performed there. Like,
oh, wow.
It's really a cool place, but he had gone through and cleaned up all the stones. There were no rocks or anything in that grass because he mows it with a rider, and he's gone through and cleaned all that up because he's trying to make a lawn there for people to sit and lay their blankets out and that kind of thing. To watch these folks on this stage, whatever, performers or whatever. And so, he was able to go down there and find the rocks where they, were laying in the grass. And it was really bizarre. Like, he's like, I've picked this whole place clean, you know what I mean? To try to keep kids and people from stumping their toes, or, they run around barefoot in the grass and they hit a rock or something. It hurts. So he spent hours and hours and hours, he said, of cleaning all that out. And he was able to literally find these rocks. And he sent me a picture. He texted me a picture later of the ones he found. But we could hear them just drop from nowhere. Ooh. You could hear the little thump, when they would hit. But they never hit us or anything around us.
It's almost like, like they were trying to get attention or something.
And amazingly accurate. I mean, like, really accurate. Because, I mean, let's face it, you throw a pallet 1 minute and a little pebble the next, or a little rock the next.
Yeah.
It's just amazing you didn't wipe us out, you know what I mean, between one or the other. But it was tremendously nerve-wracking, to say the very least.
Well, with that pallet being thrown, like you said, it would have been impossible to sort of throw it through there. It would almost have to come from above or something. What I thought about when you said that was some time that I was able to spend with a Seminole medicine man, God rest his soul, Kennedy Wise, when I did the documentary. And he talked a lot about, he says, they're just another tribe, talking about the Bigfoot. They travel down the river. We don't bother them, they don't bother us. But he said they can also make themselves invisible, and that, you see them, but you forget. In fact, one of the names, for Bigfoot, that the Seminole have is called Ihoza, which means make you forget. And so you will see them, but then you won't remember it. And there seemed to be, among Native American belief, at least in that area where I was, that there is sort of like a supernatural element to them, that they have, some abilities of some kind. So I'm wondering if something like that came into play with him being able to lob that pallet over, or maybe he was able to just throw it through the woods magically or something. I don't know.
What about the stories? That's very true. But what about the stories of like Bigfoot tracks in the snow that just end?
Yes.
Like, it is bizarre. The whole Bigfoot thing is truly a bizarre phenomenon in its own right. I mean, I have gone over the Patterson-Gimlin film so many times, and I've been like, oh, this is fake. This looks real. This seems real. No, it's got to be fake. No, they stabilized it now. This looks like a real creature. This couldn't be a man in there. And
I mean, think about it, especially back then, there wasn't a lot of good trick, photography that you could do, or even, editing, no CGI, nothing like that.
And costumes.
It was like,
I want to say clearly, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there is clearly a bottom of a foot. I mean, like, you could create some feet that you could put on some boots or whatever, maybe, or something. But I can see, this is the thing that gets me, is I can see no separations in a suit. The back, the hair is combed exactly like you would expect hair to grow on a silverback gorilla or any kind of a primate that walks upright and can walk upright. And how it turns with no neck. I mean, it doesn't really have a neck, so it has to turn its shoulders and whole upper body to turn around. If you had a mask on, you could just turn your head.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I don't know. There's just a lot
to me,
to that
it's like the
thing.
musculature,
I know it.
on the body. It's like it just doesn't look fake.
Does.
And I know there have been people that have come out and claimed to have been part of it and said that it was fake. But then I don't know. I don't know how they're.
Where's the suit?
I don't know.
They come out with that. There's, I think they said that, here's the suit, but no, it doesn't match up. It's not the suit. It can't be the suit.
Yeah.
And the guy that literally said, I can't remember his name now, said that was me. Here's the walk, and or this was the guy that did it. I don't know. All I know is if that was a fake, they should have been doing special effects in Hollywood for a lot more money.
Yeah. I mean, a couple weeks back, I had Ken DaCosta on, who's a great paranormal investigator and really, really into cryptids. And he feels like that it's real. He also took a look, he'd already seen it, but he took another look at the footage of the Bigfoot that we had in our documentary, which was taken around that general area by a guy. And he, because I said, please look at it and tell me if you think it's fake. I want to know, Yeah. And, but this again came from a guy. I was working in television. He contacted me and said, I want to send you this. I don't want anything to do with it. People are bugging me to death and making fun of me and blah, blah, blah. He sent it to me and I said, you got to let me give you something for this, and he had this encounter where with this Bigfoot, and actually got his front tooth knocked out. And so he says, well, I would like to get my tooth fixed. So I sent him like $500, from the show for that footage. And to me, it looks very good. I'd be interested if you get a chance to see it sometime, what you think about that.
Oh, I would absolutely love to look at it.
Because I'm definitely leaning on the side of the Patterson video looking real as heck.
Well, since they've stabilized it and it's just as smooth as if that camera was on a piece of concrete, the musculature, the movement
gait.
of the muscles, the gait, the way that his knees are turning in and his feet come up, the human beings have a more of an apex sort of a slide, stride, the way we slide our leg forward, slide it back. It's like a pendulum. This thing was like picking his feet up 90 degrees every time he took a step. And you could literally see the bottom of its foot. I mean, like, you could see when it steps forward, like its toes coming up as that muscle is pulling that leg forward. It's just amazing. An amazing video, amazing footage that really is just compelling to the degree that if Bigfoot truly exists, I think that's one of them. I'm just going to go on the record and say it. I'm no Bigfoot expert. It never has been my thing.
Now,
UFOs.
Do you know Bob Hieronymus?
No.
I think they call him Dr. Bob Hieronymus. Anyway, I know he was very well known. He had a radio show, and actually he and his wife had one together on various things like this. But he says, he's quite a well-known guy. He had that famous, I don't know, probably everybody out here is way too young, but he had a famous microbus that he painted for Woodstock. And it's a very famous, microbus, and he's done a lot of, paintings and things from sort of the 70s period, Jimi Hendrix and all that kind of stuff. But he's a well-known figure and a smart guy. Now, he claims that he was, or at least on something that I read online, which I have not verified with him, but that he claimed that he was in on it and he was the guy in the suit, I believe. So I would like to follow up on that a little bit. That could have been, something somebody just put out there. Anybody can say anything. But I would like to follow up with him to see, what he might have to say about that. Because to me, it's very, it was just too good of a fake for the time. Today, yeah, you can do anything today. You can fake anything. But back then, no.
Yeah. I mean, and that was in the 60s, right? It wasn't that long ago. But honestly, I don't think that there was any special effects professionals or even people who aspired to be a professional special effects artist or costume maker.
And the people that are claiming that it's fake aren't claiming that, it was CGI or any kind of special effects. They're claiming that it's a guy in a suit.
In a monkey suit, yeah.
So, even the ones that are trying to convince people that it's a fake aren't saying, oh, yeah, we had some special equipment that was state-of-the-art back in the day, a prototype, and we did this. No, they're saying it's a guy in a suit. And if that's the case, I just don't see it.
Right. I don't either. The Bigfoot enigma has been one that I've purposely just sort of, kept at a distance over the years. I've had an interest in it. I believe that it's entirely possible. And, at 52 years old, I've still got some years to go, and I look forward to hopefully living long enough to see some empirical evidence coming forward that these things are real and that they have been all along. And I just hope that it doesn't mean someone has to kill one of them to do it.
Yeah. Oh, I don't like that. Yeah. When I heard that story about the people claiming that they shot one, that was pretty controversial at the time, even though that was like 10, 12 years ago. People were saying, oh, how could they shoot it? And I was thinking, why would you shoot it? It wasn't like they were doing any damage. I guess they were scaring the dogs and throwing rocks at the house. But anyhow, I think we're just about out of time.
I cannot believe
I can't believe it either. Thank you so
I didn't get to tell any of my ghost stories or any of that. I have got to come back some point and tell some of these ghost stories, my firsthand ghost accounts. But look,
oh man, you got to.
Listen, for everybody out there that's interested in that board camp, I just realized that I'm going to be the MC at the Oz UFO conference. It's a virtual conference that's going to take place. Oz-UFO.com, OZ-UFO.com. Orville and Cheryl are going to be there. The proprietors of that Crystal Mind are going to be on that conference. It's a digital conference that you can watch right from your home. And it's June 5th and 6th. But they're going to be there. The Murphys, they're really nice people. They're going to be there to talk about their experiences and their, what's going on up until now. So.
Oh, well, thanks for sharing that with us. I'm glad you thought of that. I guess we got to go. Bill is telling me to tell Race to go start your smoker.
Yeah.
Fire up the smoker.
I've got a brisket in there now that I'm going to be smoking all night long. But Renee, thank you so much.
Oh,
thank you.
You got to come back, please. And
I absolutely will. I enjoyed it. I had a wonderful time, and thank you to all your wonderful listeners. I truly appreciate you taking the time to have me on. Oh,
my pleasure, completely. Thanks to all my listeners, and join me next week. We're going to have Court Lindell. You might remember him from Oak Island and some other TV shows. He's going to be talking about the mysteries of Arcadia, Rennes-le-Chateau, and Oak Island. So join us next week. Thanks very much. Good night, everybody.